Namaste and welcome. If you are someone who has always been driven, someone who has always wanted to do meaningful work, someone who sets high standards for yourself, someone who wants to grow, contribute, achieve, build, create, lead, serve, then let me begin by saying this very clearly. Ambition is not the enemy. Discipline is not the enemy. Excellence is not the enemy. Wanting to do something substantial with your life is not the enemy. In fact, some of the most beautiful contributions in this world come from people who care deeply, who work deeply, who commit deeply. But there is a silent cost that begins to appear when ambition is not held by inner anchoring. And that silent cost is this: you may continue moving forward in life while slowly losing contact with yourself. You may continue hitting milestones while becoming inwardly more brittle. You may continue performing at a high level while your nervous system, your emotions, your inner life, your spirit begin to pay a price you do not immediately notice. And that is what I want to speak about today. Not the obvious cost of ambition, not just fatigue, overwork, or stress, but the subtler cost. The cost of success without inner rootedness, the cost of productivity without inner replenishment, the cost of achievement without sacred anchoring. I want to speak about this from a place that is both deeply lived and carefully observed. Because in my own life, I have been shaped by two very different streams. One stream was deeply Vedic, spiritual, disciplined, and contemplative. From a young age, I was formed in monastic and Gurukul style educational environments where mantra, sacred sound, introspection, prayer, discipline, and inner culture were woven into life itself. These were not occasional add ons, they were part of the atmosphere of living. Then later, life took me deeply into the world of modern intellectual rigor and high performance. I went through advanced studies in statistics, bioinformatics, and genomics, and later completed my PhD. I also worked in intense research environments in the United States, including public health and medical research settings, where precision, output, deadlines, analysis, responsibility, and sustained performance were part of daily reality. So when I speak about ambition, I'm not speaking against it from the sidelines. I understand its beauty. I also understand its danger. Because ambition, when connected to purpose and anchored in the deeper self, can become a force of service, excellence, contribution, and transformation. But ambition without anchoring can quietly become self consuming. And that is where many people begin to suffer without realizing what is happening. You see, most high achievers do not collapse dramatically in the beginning. They simply become increasingly disconnected in subtle ways. They become less able to feel joy in simple moments. They become efficient but less alive. They become more accomplished but less inwardly settled. They become more capable outwardly but less nourished inwardly. And often the world rewards this. This is part of the problem. The world often praises the very patterns that are quietly draining you. People admire how much you can handle. They admire your resilience. They admire your consistency. They admire your output. They admire your ability to keep going. But very few people ask, at what cost? At what cost are you staying dysfunctional? At what cost are you staying this available? At what cost are you staying this productive? At what cost are you being this strong? And if nobody asks that question for long enough, you may stop asking it too. You may begin to mistake depletion for dedication. You may begin to mistake numbness for maturity. You may begin to mistake constant mental pressure for importance. You may begin to believe that if you slow down inwardly, everything will collapse. But that belief is precisely what keeps many sincere people trapped. Because the issue is not that you are ambitious, the issue is that ambition by itself cannot nourish the one who is carrying it. Let me say that again. Ambition can direct your energy, but it cannot restore your energy. Ambition can give you targets, but it cannot give you inner peace. Ambition can sharpen movement, but it cannot soften the heart. Ambition can help you win externally, but it cannot tell you whether your inner life is drying out. And this is why so many accomplished people feel strangely empty in moments when they should feel fulfilled. They reach something they worked hard for, and the satisfaction fades too quickly. They complete a goal, and instead of fullness, they feel the next pressure. They receive recognition, but inwardly, nothing truly lands. Why? Because success is being poured into a vessel that has not been inwardly replenished. And when the inner vessel is cracked, no outer achievement can fully hold. In the Vedic understanding, human life is not meant to be lived only through force, striving, and reaction. There must also be rhythm. There must also be remembrance. There must also be an inward return. Because the mind, left unanchored, keeps chasing. The ego, left unanchored, keeps comparing. The nervous system, left unanchored, keeps bracing. And the heart, left unnourished, slowly hardens and dries. This is why I often say high performance without inner practice becomes dangerous over time. Not because achievement is wrong, but because a powerful outer life requires an equally real inner foundation. Otherwise, the more you build, the more fragile you become. And one of the most subtle signs of this is when your life looks meaningful from the outside but begins to feel mechanical from the inside. You wake up and do what needs to be done. You meet obligations. You reply, you manage, you solve, you carry, you execute. But somewhere, your being is no longer participating fully. You are functioning, but you are not fully inhabiting your own life. This is a painful place to live in. And many busy professionals know this feeling far more intimately than they admit. Now, there is another subtle cost of ambition that is rarely discussed. Ambition often trains a person to live in a chronic future orientation. What is next? What is pending? What is missing? What needs to be improved? What is unfinished? What can be optimized? This creates a mind that is always leaning forward. But if a person lives too long in psychological forward leaning, they lose the capacity to rest deeply in the present. And when that happens, even rest becomes restless. Even silence becomes uncomfortable. Even stillness feels unproductive. Even joy becomes hard to access without guilt. That is not freedom. That is inner captivity wearing the clothes of success. And that is why inner anchoring matters so much. Inner anchoring means there is a place within you that is not constantly being pulled by demands, a place that remembers who you are beneath your roles, a place that is not performing, a place that is not trying to prove, a place that is not living only in reaction to the world, a place that can return you to the center. In spiritual life, and especially in the path of mantra yoga, this anchoring is not an abstract concept. It is cultivated through repeated return through sacred sound, return through breath, return through rhythm, return through attention, return through something higher than the restless mind. This is one of the reasons mantra matters so deeply in modern life. Because mantra is not merely a spiritual ornament, it is not merely something old, poetic, or culturally interesting. It is a discipline of recollection. It trains the scattered self to return. It gives the overextended mind a stabilizing thread. It gives the breath a more sacred tempo. It helps the emotional field soften and reorganize. It creates a point of return in a life that otherwise keeps moving outward. And for ambitious people, this is not a luxury. This is medicine. Because if you do not have a practice that helps you return to yourself, ambition will keep consuming your inner reserves. Slowly, quietly, respectably, and even impressively. Until one day you realize that although you have built many things, you have not been properly living inside yourself. That realization can be painful, but it can also be the beginning of wisdom. So today, I want to leave you with a reflection. Ask yourself honestly, is my ambition being held by something deeper than pressure? Is my striving connected to inner groundedness? Do I have a daily way of returning to myself? Or am I asking the achievements to do a job that only inner anchoring can do? These are not small questions. They may be some of the most important questions of your life because the goal is not to become less committed. The goal is to become more rooted, not less effective, more wholesome, not less ambitious, more aligned, not less successful, more inwardly alive while you succeed. That is a very different path. And that is the path I care deeply about sharing. If today's episode resonated with you, I want to warmly invite you into my upcoming live 2-hour workshop on mantra yoga, precision chanting, and daily sadhana for busy professionals. In that workshop, I will go deeper into how sacred sound, correct orientation, and authentic daily practice can help create the kind of inner anchoring that modern professionals are missing so desperately. And for those who stay until the end, I will also share how you can continue this journey more deeply with me and with the community if that feels aligned for you. And as a small, heartfelt gesture for this podcast community, I am keeping a 10% community coupon available for the first 25 people who registered through this invitation, not as pressure, but as a sincere opening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with honesty. And thank you for honoring the part of you that wants not only success, but depth, steadiness, and inner truth. Until next time, may your ambition be guided by wisdom and held by peace.